Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thanks again for joining me here. Happy Friday to you. Hope you're having a wonderful holiday weekend here so far. I'm sure some of you are probably still working and doing that whole thing, but at this point, I mean, honestly, holiday weekend, things are a little kind of weird in with the price action. We had that significant sell-off yesterday and a little bit of a correction here today so far. So we're going to talk about how spot volume affects, holiday weekends. Usually you see spot volume drop, which we're seeing here and now. So I wouldn't be surprised if we are still going to remain stuck in this current range, right? And if we look at the aggregated spot volume here too as well, the interest pretty heavy at 62,000. So it does have that target on its back based on, well, different structures, right? We got the 2-week time frame telling us we have a lot of volume and liquidation still left to the downside, but lower time frames are indicating, with the exception of this lower liquidation range at 62K, we have a pretty solid amount of upside potential. Okay, so obviously that needs to be taken with a grain of salt because liquidation is one thing, but we have significant selling pressure from yesterday. My speculation that was ETFs basically offloading pretty significant amounts there. Those large entities effectively just selling a ridiculous amount of Bitcoin. It was just it was the price action was super crazy, super intense, and you don't usually see that too often. Anyways, the whole point of me mentioning that is that was no coincidence. It was the last business day of the week. We have a holiday weekend now. They like to instill fear into the weekend, even though most weekends have been moderately bullish. 64,000 is that new resistance we want to be mindful of. Okay, so we're going to talk about that resistance range, the local kind of lower time frame structure here, and how that shift in momentum is happening, and then obviously what the 4-hour and daily, weekly structures are looking like too. So be sure to stick around. We're just going to go ahead and have a good, well-rounded analysis here today. Let's take a closer look. Quick heads up to our traders. We got a $500 reward bonus daily through Bitunix. Make sure you take full advantage of this. Simply use my link to register. If you have already in the past, you're automatically eligible. Links in the description below. All right, folks, before we jump into the back end data, friendly reminder, please hit the like button, comment below. If you get a chance, let me know, what are your thoughts? Do you think we're going to be dropping like a rock here soon, or do you think we're actually hitting that local bottom? There's a lot of different schools of thought, so I'd love to hear it. Comment below, let me know. Obviously, join us over on Twitter, Telegram, and Discord as well. If you want to become, I wouldn't say better trader, that's more so with my premium group, but if you want to stay a little bit more in the know and kind of get the bullet points of a lot of things that I kind of see in the market, I'm constantly throwing that data out there to you. Okay, so comment below, let me know if you appreciate it, and thanks again for being, once again, awesome people in my life. Now, when we take here, of course, a look at the spot volume, it's dropping pretty hard, or at least, the price went up. We have a perp-driven volume for the most part. This is pretty common on weekends. While, spot volume is, high-ish for the day, considering all things considered, it's still not quite where we need it to be, right? Basically, the long story short here is when spot volume goes up, for the most part, you have more sustainability, right? We saw this here too. This is a good reflection of that, where the price action bottomed out at the 62,000 range, roughly 62 to 62.5. We saw spot volume increasing leading into that, holding that level. Now, obviously, it tapered off leading into that increase, which seems kind of funny and weird, but the truth is this is mostly perp-driven right now, which is kind of a false sense of reality, or at least me personally, a false sense of hope. All right, so I wouldn't lean too hard into this little push that we have higher right now. I do think there's a chance that we can still pull back. We really got to be mindful of that, but we have broken for the first time over the 200-day SMA, specifically, well, on the weekly too. There is a weekly one there, but more specifically, I'm referring to the actual 15-minute time frame, which we'll look at here soon, because that's kind of an early catalyst, kind of like it's the best time frame for me to be able to identify these momentum shifts. While the 4 hour is perfect for that in the big picture for swing trading, if you're going to be day trading day in and day out, kind of like we do in our community, then you want to kind of stay on the know there with the lower time frames. All that said here, I posted this earlier, so if you want to check that out, of course, refer to my X or Telegram. But there is a $63,400 basically liquidation chunk there, just above the local high range for Asia high, that was perfectly swept there. Now the price is tapering off, right? It's pretty commonplace, but just know there's the same thing as well at 62,100. The price was unable to sweep that level. Doesn't mean we're going to hit it Some folks get too hell-bent on liquidation being, in certain ranges, we're going to automatically just go to that level. Just because we went up, are we going to go down now? Not necessarily. The momentum is shifting, and I personally feel that the last 2 days of offloading with the ETFs and just generally speaking, Bitcoin in general, we saw 67,000 from Bitcoin right at the beginning or the middle of the Fed meeting there, and then it tanked to 64, and then it tanked again to 62 here just yesterday. All right, so it's kind of that residual effect there. So all that being said, now that that's passed, I feel like that ship has sailed, and we're likely to bottom out here, partially because the 7-day liquidation is mostly hit. Now, you can't argue here that there is still 7-day liquidation here, of course, to the downside, which is true and relevant, of course. These are like late longs that just jumped in yesterday. Not to say that late longs can't still get hit. It's just that we have some early shorts, pretty much upwards of 65,000. I think is probably more likely the next target. Once more, a lot of things need to happen between now and then, but I just want to kind of throw that out there so you understand that generally speaking, liquidation needs to be taken into account. It certainly should be one of the important things to factor in, but don't take a trade based solely on that one thing. There are dynamic shifts that are happening on the back end that people don't necessarily pay attention to. That's why I'm here for you, right? So when we take a look at the large whale orders here, we can see some significant buying interest, right? 62,000, 61,800, both these levels have 65 million in long limit orders here waiting to get filled. Okay, so you can just see the 61.5 to 62K range is littered with just limit orders that are ready to get filled if the price pulls back. So that's a good sign in a lot of ways. It shows that there's more interest in this range here. We didn't have this kind of interest in 63 or 64K, right? So once more, it's more of a perpetual driven scenario there, where I don't truly think that that's like the most sustainable indication, but it's certainly letting us know that we hit that range, we're more likely to pivot or bounce off that level. So if we do see 61.5 to 62K range, it might be worth considering throwing a long at it and see what happens, right? Even though there's still propensity for further downside. All that said, falling wedge pattern here, I posted this earlier as well. We saw a nice little break there. This isn't just the important thing that we saw that break, but the important thing is that we're back up above and we've reclaimed this 200-day SMA. Now, if you exclude, and you kind of look back here at the 15-minute time frame, if you exclude the shenanigans on FOMC, which was on Wednesday, we've pretty much been under the 200-day SMA since pretty much Monday or Tuesday. That was the last time we were kind of above that level. And the 200-day SMA on the 15-minute time frame is a really good indication of kind of like where you're at in the market. Now, keep in mind when there's transitions, it can oftentimes waffle above and below. But when there's a significant trend, you're looking to see here that the price is pretty much maintained below that level. So that to me is kind of an indication that we're shifting gears. This could still be a fake out, for lack of better terms. We are transitioning, but it's still a positive transition, an early light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, so that's kind of just something to kind of be mindful of. I don't want you to attach yourself to that bias there or think that we're just good all of a sudden because of that one thing, but for the most part, that's a very positive scenario. Okay, so just something to kind of be mindful of there. When we look at the 4-hour time frame, there's a fair value gap upwards about 63,800. So that's kind of my target for getting out of our long position. For example, we're averaging at 63.1, pretty much exactly where we're at right now. Granted, we took that trade yesterday as the price was pulling back and averaged in. So it really depends on where you got in, obviously. But for the most part, trying to get out of that before we hit the 64K range is probably a smart call, just because we have some confluence in that area, 64,000. There's moving averages kind of hanging out there. The top of our fair value gap, previous range lows, that 63.7 to 64K range has once again some confluence there. So we can kind of let's just kind of put this here on the chart here roughly. That's approximately what we want to be looking out for. Is just this little range there, that $300 or $400 chunk. Okay, it's presumed, or should be presumed, that that's going to be our resistance moving forward. Now, this weekend here, the way the price action has been working, weekends have been notoriously bullish, at least for the last few weekends, I would say ever since May, right? Even in those declines, that strong decline we saw a few weeks ago, the weekend was fake out nonetheless, but still moderately bullish. Okay, so my speculation here is that we're going to see some relief here, sideways and up. That makes a little bit more sense for the weekend. And obviously Sunday, come Asian market hour open, might be a different story. Obviously, U.S. markets, we're going to see the biggest impact there, but for the most part, that's kind of just some things to kind of pay attention to. Another thing to recognize too is we had this overextension, of course, for TD sequential to the upside. We're now kind of on our downtrend here. It doesn't mean we're going to be moving for, 9 more days to the downside, because based on how strong it pulled back, we are maintaining above our previous range lows here. 63,000 has kind of been that numerator, if you will, that the lower range here, effectively telling us that we're more likely to hold in that range. So to me personally, kind of staying at 63K or above is kind of a mental, benefit here, or it's something in my mind thinking like, okay, we're in decent shape if we stay above 63K. It's not to say we can't still go lower, just positive, right? Nonetheless. And last thing here too to recognize is, of course, the RSI divergence here. Okay, so we had a bearish convergence here, of course, when the price was establishing higher highs and the RSI was establishing lower highs. So that's generally a bad sign, early indication of reversal, right? Hindsight's 2020, but that's where 126,000 kind of came into play. Now, when we look here, we're seeing kind of the opposite in a different way, of course, where we got our RSI divergence and a lower low pattern here on the charts. So that's generally construed as a positive sign there, showing that there is some market strength here at this point. So for the most part, these are all, generally positive things here. Once again, I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything and tell you, that we should be great. You take longs to the moon right now. That's not even the case. But the 60 to 63K range has been pretty well guarded in the recent past here. And I think for the most part, we don't want to, get too bearish in our minds here, just because we had a couple of red days that were just following an FOMC, bad news scenario. I don't think it's going to precipitate quite as fast as we saw here recently. I know a lot of folks are kind of concerned with this pretty significant correction we saw. Obviously, that 25% correction from Bitcoin was pretty big, right? Actually, no, I think it was 33% from top to bottom. We basically moved from 90,000 to 60,000 in a matter of a week or two. Okay, so that can concern a lot of people. I totally get it. But I think at this point, there's slightly more signs pointing up in the lower time frames and shifting those gears. We obviously want to wait and find out and see what happens. But for the most part here, I do want to recommend being careful taking longs, but I would also say more so specifically careful taking shorts this early. Now or this late. I don't know how to verbally explain that, but the easy way to understand it here is that 64,000. Well, we're going to presume that's going to be the resistance here. That may be a better consideration for a short than 63,000, for example. So be a little more patient here this weekend. I wouldn't expect sunshine and rainbows, but I do think sideways and up is kind of the lower time frame narrative for the moment, just based on everything I discussed here so far. Anyways, what are your thoughts? Comment below. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I'd love to hear it. And let's take a look at some altcoins here next. To my premium or premium plus members, your membership is now paid for by Bitunix. We're looking at a $50 reward bonus here every single week just for being a premium or premium plus member. Simple as that. Make sure you use the verification bot in our Discord to verify your account, and the rest is history. You can use the link below to track your progress or register if you haven't yet already. All right, folks, quick look here at Ethereum, just kind of double checking. The key level support here, of course, that's held pretty strong here so far. I mentioned yesterday 1690, roughly 1700. It's kind of that lower time frame support for ETH. Obviously, this is a 4-hour time frame giving us that indication that we have previous range highs holding as new lows. So this point of contention of 1700 is pretty much it. It's highly contested. So that level here kind of shows that it wants to hold a support. So under the impression Bitcoin doesn't surpass or drop sub 61K, there's a good chance that ETH holds this range here. We got a point of control. The fair value gap's mostly filled. I think lower time frame increase here for ETH is a higher probability. Once more, it's generally considered to be a higher risk if you're considering taking along with any coin right now, considering how strong the price had pulled back. But if we look at it side by side with Bitcoin, it's performing pretty similar, right? So there's no significant outliers here. In fact, you could actually argue it's performing worse because we actually haven't reclaimed the local high range, and Bitcoin's already swept the local highs. Okay, so the previous Asian market sessions for ETH has not been filled or reclaimed, so that it could be construed as negative. All that said, liquidation delta is at 8 billion in the red, pretty much telling us that shorts are in control and there's more liquidation on the downside. There's a lot of reasons why the price goes lower, honestly, just based on what we're seeing here so far. But you could argue that the macro structure here, the transitionary time frame, the 4-hour time frame, is telling us that 1700 is kind of that equilibrium. Okay, The longer we spend above it, the more likely we are to recover. It all depends on Bitcoin though. If Bitcoin does not recover here or surpass 64,000, really strong chance ETH goes down to the $1,600 range to hit this lower liquidation. Okay, so those are kind of my thoughts here for the moment. I would be cautious and careful taking along with ETH for now, at least until we see what happens this weekend. All right, those are my thoughts. Let me know. What are you thinking? Are you trading ETH right now? Love to hear it. All right, folks, quick look here at Solana, just kind of seeing what's going on here. Kind of stuck in this little range I discussed yesterday. We got like support at 67, resistance at 71, kind of a $4 waffle, right? It's kind of waffling around here. So when we look at the side-by-side, most coins are looking like this here, even though we do have kind of a falling wedge type of pattern, and the price action is kind of looking like it wants to break out. You do want to be cautious and careful taking trades like this. Okay, so for the most part, side-by-side with Bitcoin, majority of altcoins are struggling because they haven't reclaimed their local highs, right? So in that case, to me, that shows somewhat of a bearish divergence, even though we have a decent pattern here. So, ultimately, that's not something I like to take along into. Now, from a liquidation standpoint, there's still more to the downside. Short liquidation delta is high. There's a lot of reasons why avoiding a trade of this coin is probably the best strategy. Ultimately, there is a fair value gap above the price. If you're going to take a long, a scalp to 70, 71 might be appropriate, but you're going to want to have to watch it close, use a trailing stop loss. Between now and whenever the market decides it wants to kind of stabilize, Solana is not like an outlier or anything that's outrageously awesome to want to consider trading. Not really the best opportunity for me personally. All right, folks, quick look here at Hype. And this is a prime example of why you want to be careful trading this coin. And what I mean by that is yesterday was showing heavy divergence, more likely to continue lower, and it's rocket shipping here so far, at least compared to most altcoins. 2% isn't that great, but for the most part, compared to majority of altcoins, it's outperforming. So always be careful shorting this coin. Even though there's a macro double top, that doesn't necessarily mean too much just yet. Is still something you want to respect. But good news is, for the most part here, we can see that we've reclaimed kind of these local ranges. We got this nice little descending breakout here for the most part. Similar to Bitcoin had kind of a falling wedge pattern, and it broke to the upside. We're seeing a similar structure there for this one. In other words, if you're going to take along with any coin today, this makes the most sense to be taking along with it. Try not to go against the grain and be that magnificent person that tries to short it right now, because honestly, it's got a lot of reasons why you shouldn't do that. Having said that, there's still resistance above 75 is kind of that number we've talked about previously. So 75, kind of remember that number. And then same thing with liquidation short delta, still high to the downside, suggesting there's still suppression here, or we're in a transition. So ultimately, it should give you pause to want to take a long. So once again, instead of forcing a trade and kind of trying to push something that may not be realistic, even though this coin is better than most coins today, I would still be careful taking along, even though it is slightly more favorable. We're going to see some upside in this coin. Okay, so just be careful, protect your trades. Always, shoot for a 2-to-1 ratio on your trades there, and make sure that you're adjusting your stop losses into profit. I work with my whale traders on that all the time because they use really large positions. And if you are in profit, you need to go take a nap or something. Move your stop loss into profit, or put a stop loss in place. It's important to do that. You got to protect your monies right now because, man, the market, it just moves really fast. Okay, so those are just my thoughts there. What are yours? Why don't you comment below? All right, folks, so let's take a look here at SUI and kind of round things out. And SUI is not looking good. This is kind of a bearish type of pattern here, just based on kind of the structure, if you will. While this is not like the perfect and most optimal situation there, upside makes little sense for this coin. Okay, once again, just a bird's eye view there for SUI. But looking side by side here with Bitcoin, you can see the struggle bus, right? Bitcoin is kind of trying to push up here, essentially, effectively swept its local range highs. SUI's local range highs are like not even close. Okay, so that's a significant divergence. And yes, arguably you could say that this is a somewhat of a bullish structure. I really don't see it though. Some folks are thinking that we're seeing a falling wedge there, and the falling wedge can break to the upside. It's just higher risk right now, right? It's going to require Bitcoin to go higher, and that's not really. That's kind of a gamble right now. Truth is, right? Liquidation short delta is super high, more liquidation to the downside. There's literally no reason to take along with this coin. Now, keep in mind, SUI has a tendency of doing the exact opposite of how I analyze a coin. What I mean by that is, it shows significant bearish divergence. It gives you all the indications you should take a short right now. However, it's probably more likely to pump here because that's just how it works. It has a tendency of kind of defying those traditional rules of trading. So if I were a gambling man, a long right now actually does make sense. But take that with a grain of salt. I'm simply letting you know how odd the price action is on this coin. In most cases, it has a tendency of kind of doing the opposite of what is logical. So perhaps a contrarian, trading scenario for SUI is in line. It's up to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts though. Comment below. I'd avoid trading this coin for the moment. Really don't see a lot of good opportunities here today. Just again, significant sell-offs leading into a 3-day holiday weekend, at least specifically for Bitcoin, causes, it shakes the market, right? So right now we're shook and everything needs to kind of just calm down and relax. And, trying to find opportunities today can be challenging. So those are my thoughts. What are yours? Comment below. If you do want to become, again, a better trader, cryptocash.tech is the site. We have a lot of new members coming over. Make sure you reference our trade alerts, our premium updates, just so you can kind of stay above and just kind of in the know. I'm constantly providing those updates to my members. And I just want to let you know, too, we got some nice profits on some Bitcoin shorts this weekend. And we are technically in a long right now that's slightly averaged in lower than the current price. So I'm planning to honestly close that trade here fairly soon if all goes well. Just a little bit of profit. It's just kind of a weird weekend. I don't really like the way things worked out yesterday. Either way, have a good one. We'll see you the next one. Take care. Quick congrats to our community members for some awesome benefits here through Bitunix. Link in the description below for the details, but we're looking at a $50 USDT bonus weekly just for being a premium or premium plus member. Basically pays for itself. There's also a $500 daily prize pool and a volume reward bonus of upwards of $100. Simple, easy to use, Bitunix.